A very warm welcome to all of you for the book launch of Jahanara by Sri Sukumaran, a novel in Tamil translated into English by Kalaivani Karunakaran. A very warm welcome to both of you. The book has been stunningly produced by Eka, an imprint of Westland. Just the cover would make you want to buy the book. Jahanara was the daughter of Emperor Shah Jahan and Begum Mumtaz Mahal. She was quite a remarkable woman. She had received education and had mastery over various languages. She was quite a master at Persian, Arabic, Urdu. She was very good at mathematics and philosophy. And she was deeply interested in literature. She was herself a poet. Jahanara and her brother Dara Shikoh were both practitioners of the mystical Islamic faith of Sufism. In fact, they were the only two descendants of the Taimur dynasty to embrace Sufism. Both of them became the disciples of Mullah Badakshi, and her guru was so fond of Jahanara that he wanted to pass on the baton after him to Jahanara, but there was no permission within the order to do so. Jahanara writes a book on her Guru Mullah Badakshi, and in fact she also writes a book on Chishti Saab. And in Sahibiyan, an autobiographical narrative that is written by her, she narrates the difficulties of moving from traditional Islam to Sufism, her search for a spiritual master, her experiences, her thoughts. It's all vividly penned. And there is in the beginning of the book, the first page of the book has the inscription that's there on Jahanara's tomb, which is an evidence for the kind of Sufi she was herself. Jahanara was also very deeply interested in architecture. So you can imagine the kind of intelligence that this woman kind of claimed and mastered. Her father, Shah Jahan, gave her that title of First Lady. It was called Padshah Begum. This was not just an honorific title, but it was invested with a lot of power and authority, and Jahanara had the powers to, issue orders to her society, which is very rare for a woman of her times. And Jahanara had a palace of her own. She was a very good entrepreneur. She had a ship, and she was involved in trade, and she earned huge fortunes. And with the fortunes that she earned, she, gave away a lot of her fortunes to the needy, to the poor. She built mosques. She did a lot of good work. She was quite an enlightened woman, is what I'm coming to say. But there is a sad side to Jahanara's story, that she became, a kind of a pawn in this dynastic dynamics. Her mother passed away very early when Mumtaz Mahal passed away when Jahanara was 17. So she became a kind of a maternal figure to her siblings. She had to take on the burden of the family, and she had to become a confidant, friend, and, support to her ailing father, who was kind of devastated by the death of his wife. The result of this was that Jahanara had to suppress many of her desires. She had to suppress her ambition, and she had to, toe the line of the family honor. So a lot of things that she herself wanted to do, she could not accomplish. The novel is a very poetic portrayal of the life of this remarkable woman, a woman who was far ahead of her times. The novel very carefully and sensitively examines the life of this extraordinary character in history At once a victim of her circumstances, but she also rised above her circumstances. It's very interesting that a character relegated to the forgotten pages of history is drawn to the center stage and becomes the protagonist of this novel. It's also very interesting that the present is confronted with an episode from the past. How does religion become a vehicle for power and authority? The novel almost resonates. Religion is the opium of the masses. What is kingdom? What is kingship? Who is the king? What is dynastic politics? The novel raises some very important questions. Does the king have a private persona? And does that private persona impact the people around him? How does it impact the women? The novel asks these very pertinent questions as well. How do these women, caught in the throes of social and political forces, shape their personal? The novel is also a very poignant portrayal of this number of women who would otherwise have been forgotten in the throes and flows of history. The novel brings them to the forefront and endows them with, dignity. Their capabilities are recorded. So it's a wonderful novel that not just tells you the story of Jahanara, but it's also a vivid picture of the times. I want to congratulate Mr. Sukumaran for this wonderful novel. There is an afterword in this book, but for the benefit of people who are yet to read the book, I'd like to ask you this question that you wrote this, you began to write this novel under very unusual circumstances. A tome that led to investigate a life. You went and saw the tome when you decided to investigate the life of Jahanara. Can you please talk about this journey?
Okay. Good evening to all. I think it's a punishment for a writer to elaborate on his novel, which has been completed so far. Thanks for Deepa, because whatever I want to say in the novel, it has been in detail, she has explained in detail. Okay. See, basically I am a poet. I am content with my poetry only. I want to be known as a poet, and that's enough as far as myself is concerned. But I'm here in this field, started at the age of 16. Now I am 67. So 50 years, I'm dilly-dallying with this literary field. So at a point, I felt that poetry is not sufficient to convey whatever I feel or I think I want to communicate with my reader, if at all anybody there. Okay. Then I shifted to prose. It led me to the art of novel. I have written 2 novels, but I can say that I am an accidental novelist. Okay, that is the thing. As far as this novel is concerned, I have mentioned in the afterword, though there are historical events, historical characters, historical things are there, it's not at all a historical novel. It is about the contemporary women who are in power or in politics. You can name anybody whom you know. For that, Jahanara stood a good example for me. 2 things made me long before I went to Delhi. just we were wandering. I went to the Dargah complex in Nizamuddin. There are two things catched my mind. One is the dome of Amir Khusro. Since he is a poet, he was very dear to me. I have read his poems. I have listened to his ghazals and other things. It is normal for a poet to recognize another poet. While I was passing through the domes, there was a dome, it is open. It catched my mind. Normally, the Muslim domes will be closed. This one is open. Then I asked that Imam, who is responsible for who is the caretaker of that place, and he narrated the story of Jahanara. And he said a word, she wanted to be a Sufi. This is the first time in Mughal history a lady wants to become a Sufi. But at that time, there was no order to accept women as Sufis. So she was denied that opportunity. But mentally, she was prepared to be a Sufi, lead a Sufi life. That made me fascinating, and I started to think of her. Basically, my idea was to write a poem about her. When I started to write a poem, I identified that it will not end in a poem. So it evolved into a novel. And as for Tamil, it has been written in Tamil. We have a huge number of historical novels in Tamil. About the Chola dynasty, Pandya dynasty, and even Vijayanagara. But there are very few, as far as myself is concerned, there is nothing about Islam history, especially having a woman as the center character. So I decided to write about Jahanara, her pains, her pleasures, and her power, and whatnot. That is the origin of this novel.
So the book is absolutely poetic and picturesque. It's also vivid and very grand in its narrative. So there are darbars, there are palaces, and there are concubines, there are harems, there's the battlefield, there is sacrifice, there is strategy. So it's a very gripping tale of Jahanara and the world that Jahanara belongs to. I have two questions to ask you, sir. One question is, how did you decide on the language that you had to use for this novel? So was that Tamil easily available to you, or did you have to prepare for that language that you had to write this novel in? The second is, what I found very interesting is that this novel has 2 points of view. One is the point of view of Panipat, and who is the eunuch very close to Jahanara, someone who has seen her from her birth. And the second half of the novel is from the point of view of Jahanara itself. This to me is very interesting because I think it occupies two ends of the spectrum. But does it really occupy two ends of the spectrum is what I came to me as an afterthought, because Jahanara is equally vulnerable. And in fact, Panipat himself says that everyone here is a slave to people, to emotion, and to power. So I want to know why you thought of such a structure.
As per the language of the novel is concerned, this is my second novel. I wrote my first novel by name Wellington. It is about a place of Adivasis became the military barrack. So I was brought up in that environment. So it's a story of mine. The protagonist or the center character is none other than me. The story is how the boy come to age. That is the thing. Beyond that, how the people of the barracks lives. That is the thing. I adopted a very simple narrative in that novel because the novel starts from the point of a 10-year boy to his 17th year. So he will not be much mature. He will not be dreaming. He will not be having very imaginative things and other. So I maintained a very simple language for that novel. Whereas Peruvali, Jahanara is concerned, the history is there. There are vast things are there in the history of Mughal dynasty. Plenty of poems, plenty of arts, plenty of music, and everything fascinated me to adopt a different language for this novel. That is the thing. The same case, the first part is with Panipat, a imaginary character, and Jahanara, say, to show that she is not at all matured to that level in which the novel goes in the second part. The second part, she decides whatever she wishes and whatever things she encounters, it is there. Now she is a matured lady and know what is what. That's why I made it. I have never interpreted in that. The writer is nowhere there. Only Jahanara is there. Her diary notes are there. That's why the novel has this type of structure to give her a more weightage. That's why I adopted that.
The next question is to Kalaivani. I want to congratulate you on this very beautiful translation. It's very effortless, very flow. It reads very well, and there are no hitches, no hiccups, and I really enjoyed reading the translation because most translations in English today are, the translators want to show their mastery over language, but here very unpretentious and very truthful translation. So I want to congratulate you on that, Kalaivani. This is your first translation. So I hope there are many more translations in the pipeline. Because we were speaking about language, I want to ask you that after reading the Tamil, how did you kind of find your language in English? Because the novel is very deeply set in a certain culture. It's set in a certain milieu. It has a period to it. So how did you find your language?
Very good evening to one and all. While talking about the language, I want to share how translating Jahanara. This is my first translation of fiction. Closer. This also affected the way I read text because for the first time I realized that I cannot complete a novel within a single day. That's how I used to read. Because reading a novel like this at a stretch, that is how I thought, that is how we do justice to the text, not taking a break and coming back. But this novel was not like that. Only then I realized this, for a translation we cannot read like this. So I would say, beginning with the reading of the novel, translation process, and adapting a language, I would say this is a learning process. The professors and my friends who used to co-work with the translation, we always consider translation as a learning process. About language, when sir was answering the question, I thought he would use these words, but he expressed that in a different set of words. Jahanara demands this kind of a language. He almost invokes Jahanara as his muse for this novel. It was Jahanara who guides him through this kind of writing. That's how he explained over a informal conversation. So my problem is, Jahanara is not my muse. So and I have to do justice to someone else's work. So that was a different kind of pain, because I'm not the writer, but I have to undergo the pain which is not mine. So again the same, I cannot approach a text in the way I used to approach. So sometimes he would say I'm overdoing. I was telling him once that I have to keep Virginia Woolf in mind for reading or translating. He would say, no, do not compare me with Virginia Woolf. I'm not to that extent. But it is not. I'm not comparing his language and language of Virginia Woolf. The kind of concentration and grip over the language that the text demands, I see Virginia Woolf's language as a source of energy, or the kind of a pain that translation process demands. So I would say, while working on other translations also, it doesn't stop only with the text. I need to derive motivation from something else to translate. Jahanara is his muse, and he derives motivation and energy from Jahanara. But to be truthful, I cannot, to be honest, I cannot say that Jahanara is not my muse. But the way I read a text, the way I have to understand whatever he thought while writing it, I have to transform that, or I have to find that same kind of sense in different language. So that was the first experience. The way I read a text, I understand a text, was completely reconfigured. And many people, when I talked about this novel while working on it, they warned me, that is highly poetic and you have to be very careful. I was not discouraged, but because I knew what kind of a work it demanded. So Jahanara must have written everything. She's from the Mughal tradition, and she must have written in a different language. It must be in Urdu or Parsi. And he writes in Tamil, which carries its own load of cultural and linguistic tradition. And a Mughal princess expresses her emotions in Tamil. So, and I have to reflect all this in English. So, at first I didn't know, because I always had in mind that I'm unable to do justice when I translate. I cannot carry the sense of Tamil original into English. Then later on, I've been advised by one of the senior writers that you cannot expect, between two unequal linguistic mediums, you cannot expect the same kind of sense to be felt in translation. So I compromised with that. Compromise means I understood. So I would say Jahanara chose the language for Tamil original, and I wouldn't say I chose. the translation has taken its own course. And the other thing is, I should mention about the editorial process also. Because I have never edited a creative work. I've been editing academic writings and all that, but the pain of editing creative work like this, that was I saw the process, and I understood the pain of an editor. There also the language is transformed, modified, and they keep in mind, because the editors were my first readers. So only then, when they came back with comments and for clarifications, I understood how a reader has to also undergo the pain of because there will be shifts in narration. In the first chapter, it's Panipat's voice, and in the fourth chapter there is a shift in the voice. It is not Panipat's voice, but the narrator's voice. So the shift was like a glide in Tamil, but it is not. The glide doesn't. I'm not comfortable with the glide in English. So that was very problematic in when it went for editorial process. So then I understood it is not. So the language has to be fine-tuned more. So I would say, as I in the beginning I told, it was a learning process. Then I understood there is a sense for the original, and it demands a different sense when we translate it to a different language, and how it reaches the readers. So it is not the language we choose. It is a kind of process that the translation and the original text takes one forward.
Kalaivani, did you have any kind of conversations with the writer? And what kind of conversations did you have? Did he give you views on the English translation at any point? Was he your first reader, or were your editors your first reader?
He was the first reader. I have read his first novel, Wellington, but the confidence as a translator didn't come from me, it came from him. Because over a conversation, he said, because I didn't know how would he see the sample. He said, I know my translator. Then I recognized myself as a translator. Okay, you're baptized. So that is when I gained the confidence. Okay, if the writer is happy about the translation, then I can go on. Because I have never translated professionally fictional work. When the writer is happy, then that means I'm doing justice to the text. So I went forward, and there were several conversations. I often trouble him with the names, terms, doubts and all that. And he often have to go back to the sources that he referred while writing the original. So that was very tremendous for him, but he was very kind enough to help me through that.
The problem is that I have completed the novel 7 years before. I have forgotten the novel. I'm thinking of writing another novel, as normally any writer does. This girl quite often asks, "Sir, what is that?" I could not recollect what it was, where it is. I could not recollect where it was. And I have made some mischiefs in that novel. When you are reading, you can identify. Normally, eunuch don't grow beard. I made it as a bearded man, as a eunuch. That is one thing. And one more doubt she asked us. There was a smell of apple in the hands of Shah Jahan. She asked, I cannot find a reference for that anywhere else, sir, because it came from my mind only, from my imagination only. That's all. But it made added advantage to that character.
Sir, like you just said, you started thinking about this novel almost 30 years ago, in 1995-96. And you finished this novel in 2017. So which is almost like 20-25 years you took to finish what started in 1995. So in this time gap, did the framework of your novel change? Because I ask you this question because you yourself say in the afterword that you can't directly speak about the present, so you have to take refuge in the past or in history. So was the new politics that was emerging in this country changed the framework of the way you looked at this whole novel?
Let me be outspoken. Okay. Okay. Yeah. I have some friends who are involved in politics and from inverted commas, from a dynasty. I wanted to write a novel keeping that friend in my mind, whereas I could not do that. The next day, auto rickshaw will come to my home and I will be behind the bars. Okay. So I decided, if it is a historical character, no one can claim. So this is very common to all the women in politics now. See, we are speaking about the politics of dynasty now. That is one thing I wanted to opinion about that. That is one thing. And second one is the power of religion, as you said. When the Tamil novel came out, one of my friends wrote a review. When I read the review, I got shocked and astonished. It is just supporting the Hindutva agenda, whereas the novel itself is totally against it. And I decided a creation means to different people in different ways. That is the thing. That is the pity and plus about this novel.
Sir, it's very interesting that you invoke Akbar very repeatedly in this entire novel. Is it deliberate? Are you trying to foreground a certain kind of politics, a certain kind of kingship?
No, it's not politics or kinship. It's because of his dream, Deen Ilahi. That is the one religion or the whole religion which embraces all the human kind. That was fascinating to me. That's why I have repeatedly brought Akbar into the novel.
Sir, what I felt was very striking about this novel are its women. The women were not just ornaments in the imperial court, but they were educated, they were artists, they were poets, they were painters, and they were very politically savvy. And many of these women had access to Akbar's huge library. They were very well read. They could play chess, they could play polo, and they went on outdoor hunting. So it's a very different kind of Zanana that we get to see in this novel. They also influenced government decisions. For instance, Jahanara was consulted on many major decisions that the kingdom or the government took. So Noor Jahan, Mumtaz Mahal, and of course Jahanara, and that remarkable teacher Sati al-Nisa, who was such a scholar on Persian and Arabic literature. She was a scholar on Quran. She knew medicine. She was an advisor on etiquette. Many things. This, I was thinking, is so contrary to the views that we have of the Mughal world and its Zenana. And it's also sad that today we no longer see these reflections in the modern practice of Islam and how women are treated by Islam today. What was it for you to meet these outstanding women? I was particularly moved by the questions that Jahanara asked. What I think is very phenomenal about your novel is that not only are these women accomplished, but you give them the agency of reflection. They're all thinking women, and Jahanara, I was very moved. I think it's in page 93, if I remember. She says it talks about her mother and her father, their relationship, and she says, my mother's relationship with my father has been very painful. So is this love? Is love such a painful thing? So there are many such very poignant moments that you open up in this novel in the world of women. Can you please speak about it?
I don't think these type of questions would have been raised in the Mughal period. The main thing which affected me is that whatever you say, whatever you've done, whatever way you are after all a woman. That is the message conveyed through history till today. I just want to, I cannot say that question it, I want to record it. That's why after the demise of Shah Jahan, Jahanara feels a abundant freedom. So hereafter there is no shackles for her, there is no taboo for her, there is no prison or no restriction for her. This is the thing I want to stress. And it is too contemporary, I think. It's not a bygone or old one. It is contemporary. Still, our women are like that. And particularly, Jahanara is the metaphor of our contemporary woman. That's what I can say now.
My next question is to Kalaivani. Usually, the author has only one worry about his novel, but a translator has two worries. That is about understanding the novel and to bring it into English. So, the translator has more burden, is what I always feel. How did you prepare to translate this writer? Does one have, is your method, like many other translators feel, is to read all the works of that writer, read and reread to understand him before you bring him into another language? So what kind of preparation did you do before you started translating the author Sukumaran?
I would say I purposefully avoided reading about Sir, because my professor, when I started reading this novel for translation, he started reading, watching the videos where he speaks on YouTube, so that he would get sense of what kind of a person is he, what kind of creative art he has. But I refused to, because I was very nervous. Except for the one sentence, I know my translator. I hope I have no nothing to motivate me or give me confidence. So if I'm going to get prejudiced about this man who's begun the novel, then I would get lost, because I'll be very anxious throughout. So I don't want to know what kind of a person I was dealing with. I want to focus only on the text. After completing the novel, I have read his novel already. Only after completing the translation, I started reading. So I didn't. I prepared by close reading the text, but I didn't prepare reading about the author. Otherwise,
Actually, I don't mean reading the author, but reading his works, a close rereading of his works to get an insight to who this writer is.
no. I started reading only after completing the translation.
Actually, when you read this novel, it almost feels like a woman has written this novel. Did that give you a sense of comfort?
No, again. Because it's a woman who's writing.
It's a loss for me.
No. Because I would have enjoyed that as a reader, but as a translator, that is again a burden for me because um, a male writer, there is a feminine sense to the text, and how am I going to take it to the language? I would have enjoyed it as a reader, but as a translator, I couldn't. So while reading the text again for preparing this event, I enjoyed it much. I didn't get this kind of a sense when I was reading this for translation.
Did you read it again in Tamil or in English?
Both.
You read it in both. Kalaivani, do you want to read some passages from the text that are very close to your heart?
Yes, I would like to read from the Tamil original and also in English. First.
Yeah.
This is the second chapter of this novel. ஜஹனாரா ஒரே கனவில் 2 காட்சிகளை கண்டாள். இரண்டும் ஒன்றுக்கொன்று முரணான காட்சிகள். ஆனால் 2 காட்சிகளிலும் அவள் இருந்தாள். தர்பார் நடந்து கொண்டிருக்கிறது. பேரரசரும் பிரதானிகளும் இருப்பதனால் அது திவானி ஆமாகத்தான் இருக்க வேண்டும். அரியாசனத்தில் அமர்ந்திருப்பது ஆபாதானா என்பதும் தெளிவாக இல்லை. வழக்கம் போல அவள் ஜரோகாவுக்கு பின்னால் நின்று பார்த்து கொண்டிருந்தாள். ஆஜானுபாகுவான ஒருவன் சக்கரவர்த்தியின் அருகே வந்து நிற்கிறான். அவனை பார்த்த நொடியில் ஜஹனாராவின் குருதி ஓட்டம் இயல்பை விட வேகமாகிறது. முகத்தில் வியர்வை துளிர்க்கிறது. கால்கள் சோர்கின்றன. அவனை பார்க்கக்கூடாது என்று பார்வையை திருப்பிக் கொள்கிறார். ஆனாலும் சிரம் சூரியனை தேடுகிற மலர் போல அவன் முக வெளிச்சத்தை நோக்கியே திரும்புகிறது. தன்னை கட்டுப்படுத்திக் கொள்ள முடியாமல் ஜஹனாரா மறைவிடத்தை விட்டு ஆபாவின் அருகில் போய் அந்த திடகாத்திரனை அரை கண்களால் பார்க்கிறாள். அவள் வந்து நிற்பதை கூட கவனிக்காமல் அவன் சக்கரவர்த்தியிடம் எதையோ கூறிக்கொண்டிருக்கிறான். உற்று கேட்கும்போதுதான் அவன் பேசவில்லை, பாடுகிறான் என்று புரிகிறது. அவன் விழிகள் அவள் மேனியில் படர்கின்றன. பாடலை முணுமுணுத்து கொண்டே அவன் உதடுகள் ஜஹனாராவின் நெற்றியில் பதிகின்றன. தேவி என்று இனிமையாக முனகுகின்றன. சுற்றிலும் இருந்தவை மறைகின்றன. எங்கும் நீல வெளிச்சம் பரவுகிறது. அவள் உடல் மட்டும் எழும்பி உயர்கிறது. எழும்பிய உடலிலிருந்து ஆடைகள் தாமாகவே அவிழ்ந்து மேகங்களாக அலைகின்றன. முத்து மாலைகளும் கை வளையல்களும் கங்கணங்களும் கழன்று வெளிச்சத் துகள்களாக அந்தரத்தில் மிதக்கின்றன. மண்ணும் மரங்களும் மாளிகைகளும் அவளை கடந்து கீழ் நோக்கி விரைகின்றன. அலைந்து கொண்டிருக்கும் கடல் முத்துகள் தைத்த பொற்சரியை இழைத்த அவளுடைய மேலாடை முருகி புரியேறி வடமாகிறது. உடனே வடம் நெளிந்து இரட்டை நாவுகள் கொண்ட பெரும் பாம்பாக ஊர்கிறது. அதன் பிளந்த வாயிலிருந்து தீச்சுவாலைகள் பாய்ந்து ஜஹனாராவின் சரீரம் பற்றி எறிகிறது. அவள் உடலை தொட்டபடியே மேகங்களும் நட்சத்திரங்களும் மேல் நோக்கி எழும்புகின்றன. நீலம் இருண்டு கருத்திருக்கிறது. தகிக்கும் உடல் வெம்மை தாழாமல் துள்ளி கீழே விழுகிறது. விழும்போதே பெரிய தீக்கோளமாக மாறுகிறது. பெரிய தாமரை பூ போன்ற 2 கரங்கள் விழுந்து கொண்டிருக்கும் அக்னி பந்தை ஏந்திக் கொள்கின்றன. அந்த கைகளில் பனியின் குளிர்ச்சி தீண்டியதும் தீப்பந்து அணைகிறது.
Are you reading the same passage?
Shall I?
Yes, please read.
The darbar is on. Divani arm. The emperor and the ministers are present. It is not clear whether the one on the throne is Abba. She stands behind the Jaraka as usual. Her body hovers around the ground. Her garments loosen and transform into clouds. Her pearl necklaces, bangles, and bracelets come off and turn into shafts of light. Her shawl woven with the golden threads and pearls twirls, twist, and becomes rope-like. And then it squirms and transforms into a fork-tongued serpent emitting fire. Jahanara's body is set ablaze. Clouds and stars rise, touching her body. The blueness diminishes into darkness. Unable to bear the heat, her scorched body begins to drop to the ground, turning into a ball of fire. As it is falling, a pair of large lotus-like hands catch her. Touched by their coolness, the fire is put out. I I would say I didn't get the sense while in the translation which I got while reading this novel. This is this was the first passage where I get a different sense of approaching a text. I don't know whether you have noticed when he started, there was a shift in the tone. I explain because that is how I understood the passage, and that was a kind of a eureka moment for me. That's why I wanted to read this. This is when I used to I got a different sense of reading a text, because while reading this, I got reminded of an exercise that we play on Veena. We used to play Adadalam in Kiravani. So while playing that, that was very simple, basic lesson that the children play, and we played different ragams. When it goes towards the higher octave, Padani, Padani, Sasa, when it touches the Panjam, I used to get excited as if I'm on a roller coaster. Even now, I got the same sense when I read this passage. So I was so excited because that is not the way how I used to read the text. When we read the text, we focus only on the characters and the language. But I had never had the experience of connecting the text with something else that is not relevant to the text at all. I'm sure I haven't captured this in English. I couldn't.
We can't judge because many of us are not original Tamil readers. Before we open the before we open it out to the audience, I have one curious question. Shah Jahan addresses Mumtaz as Devi, and Dulera addresses Jahanara as Devi. I'm a little curious about the way they address.
Critical question. I have answered to this in my afterword. There is a story that the illicit relation between Shah Jahan and Jahanara. Two historians vouched this. I am so much doubtful about that. That's why I just made something meshy on that. I didn't go elaborate into that. I'm not firm. I'm not sure about that. That is one thing. What's the other question? Yeah, because in one place in the novel, Mumtaz says that you should look after him, Shah Jahan. And in one occasion, when he was hugging Jahanara, he utters Devi. These are the two places. I felt it was very delicate to write, so I just make it a doubtful place and left it to the reader. Let them decide whether it's right or not.
We can take 2-3 questions from the audience if there are any. If there are no questions, then Once again, we thank the authors Sukumaran and Kalaivani for such a wonderful read. Thank you, and I wish the book all the success.
Before bid a farewell to you, I wish to thank some of my friends who has made this book possible. Without their support, this would have been not in English. Primarily my Tamil publisher, Mr. Kalachoda Kannan. And he made the arrangements to get into English. And the publishers, Westland, Eka, and Meenakshi Zago, the editor, especially, for this event, Blossom, and Book Brahma, Sadish Chaparia, and my translator, Kalaivani. And very thankful to Deepa Ganesh, who has conducted this conversation. Thank you, Deepa, and thank you all my friends.